I think it's safe to say throughout gaming history, popularity has mostly struck around the first party stuff in the early years of gaming, with big core titles that showed off a system's capabilities, getting people excited in the mid-2000s, whether that be because of a holiday deadline, a system's launch title, or because every casual gamer doesn't give a shit about how the game plays, only how it looks, which is a really irritating mindset to me. However, in this day and age, a new contender has stepped into the ring of gaming's greatest, indie games. Now, what are indie games? Indie games are games made by oneself or a small team, both of which will have their games published by themselves. As an example, SA2 Battle was developed by Sonic Team, but got published by Sega, so it's not really considered indie. On the other hand, Cuphead was completely developed and published by Studio MDHR, a relatively small team at the time, so it's an indie game. It's an indie game, I swear. Now, I've dabbled in some good indie games in my day, and I could say from my incredibly humble and always 100% correct opinion that they are pretty cool most of the time. Cuphead's brutally challenging yet fun bosses, Undertale and Deltarune's incredible dialogue and story. Hell, even Minecraft was but a wee indie game at one point until it had its teenage years along with a growth spurt and became the best-selling video game ever. Excuse me, what? But throughout the indie games I've seen or played, the genre the most relevant was surely 2D platformers, which makes a lot of sense. With the limitless game engines being released nowadays, along with the most useful tool in the world, the internet, learning how to create and actually creating these platformers is miles simpler than back in, say, the 80s. The spark of creation for all these 2D platformers comes from a lot of different series like Sonic the Hedgehog, Mega Man, you name it. Though your favorite indie platformer could very well be inspired by a random PS2 platformer, let's be real, it all traces back to our renowned red plumber, Super Mario. I'm not gonna go on a whole Walmart grocery list worth of info on how Red Luigi here saved video games as a whole, because I already talked about that in my Super Mario Bros. 1 video. Go watch that pretty please. Nonetheless, today we talk about one of my personal favorite indie games. Not even of the year, but just kinda all together. Pizza Tower, a speed-based platformer inspired by the Wario Land series, specifically taking a lot of its tropes from Wario Land 4. Now, I played this game about 4 times now. 1 for 100%, 1 for this video, and 2 for funsies, so I should be pretty well bestowed with pizza knowledge. With that, maybe hit the funny buttons below the video, and grab a slice of pizza while I go through this delicious game with you. Now, just to clear things up, I'm not going to go over the development history of this game, and instead I'll tell you that this was a playable demo for the Sonic Amateur Games Expo 2019, otherwise known as Sage 2019. And it also has a lot of demo changes throughout its development. So, what's the haps with the final product here? Booting up the game brings us to an intro cutscene, and oh my god, this game is gross. But with its ugliness comes its charm. You see, it's a bit like the Baldi's Basics series, where Baldi's Basics was trying to make that game look like an old Windows 98 floppy disk game with goofy models and terrible sprite work, therefore ugly. Pizza Tower is trying to go for the shitty fan game with MS Paint graphics put together in 5 minutes, therefore ugly. The art and animation were inspired by cartoons such as Courage the Cowardly Dog, and more accurately, Ed, Edd and Eddy. And yes, it does have its own MS Paint style, but I assure you, this game was definitely not made in 5 minutes, as every animation is extremely fluid and provides incredible visual feedback. Slamming on the ground feels powerful, seeing all these colors fly by when I'm going really fast gives me an adrenaline rush. Every frame gives off the exact feeling I want, especially when paired with the incredible music in hand. There's a good bit of music in this game, and it's all really well made. Of course, its main instrument inspiration is Wario Land 4, but manages to keep a consistent style that's upbeat, fits with the level themes, and even gets a little wacky here and there. We're greeted to an intro cutscene. We see Peppino Spaghetti, owner of the currently unsuccessful Peppino's Pizza restaurant, struggling to keep up with the expenses that come with owning the establishment. Peppino meets Pizza Face, and after just giving the most appropriate reaction to seeing a giant sentient pizza, Pizza Face explains to Peppino about his plan to shoot the restaurant with his giant laser he built on top of his tower, somehow without anyone noticing what he was doing. So who are the authorities in this universe? Peppino, being the extremely panic-prone Italian he is, books it out the door towards the tower on his newfound mission to save his beloved restaurant. even though he's getting free demolition without much cleanup on his already failing business. Simple enough story, gets the goofiness right out of the gates, and sets an expectation for the rest of the game. After the intro cutscene, we see a black void with Peppino staring at us with monitors in the background. Fun fact, if you stare at the screen without pressing anything for a bit, Peppino jump scares you and closes the game. Don't know who put FNAF in my pizza, but it's a welcome surprise. Now, you have 3 options for characters: Peppino, the Noise, or both of them in the secret unlockable swap mode. Who is the Noise? Well, to be brief, he's Peppino's rival and the face of Noise TV, a real goofball with a lovable and destructive personality, as well as a few lethal weapons at his disposal. He can be unlocked after completing a Peppino save file. Alas, after selecting a save file, you are to go to the right after entering the tower, to which you are blocked by these blockades until you do the tutorial. Go to the tutorial. Speaking of which, it's actually great how the tutorial doesn't handhold you much as to make you do the actions, but letting you figure out how to do it on your own while they tell you all the button combos. It's also great that they only teach you the basic mechanics while leaving the advanced ones to you, so you can feel proud of your discoveries, whether they were anticipated or not. You'll quickly learn about how this game functions and how to know what to do and where to do it. Peppino and the Noise have quite the arsenal here. Of course, there's your standard platformer stuff, but being that this game is inspired by Wario Land 4, there's bound to be some new and goofy moves as well. The main attraction with this moveset is the Mach running, which lets you run at Mach 1, then after a while Mach 2, and finally Mach 3. Another move is the grab, which you can turn into a regular punch, a giant swing, a spinning pile driver, and an uppercut. In some levels, you get to play as Gustavo and Brick for a good part of the level, because Gustavo is just that much of a bro for helping his pal out in his darkest moments. This duo shares similar qualities with Peppino and the Noise, but is naturally slower and doesn't have a grab, but instead, a bunch of other ways to take out enemies. I like playing as these goobers. Their moveset is really creative, but I guess since the Noise is probably broadcasting the adventure for him to put on Noise TV, unfortunately you don't get to play as Gustavo and Brick where you usually would in one of Peppino's save files, so that's a tad sour. Finishing up the tutorial is where I can finally preach this extremely well thought out gameplay loop. To start, you'll scour the tower's halls and find a level of your choosing on your current floor. The tower has 5 floors each with 4 levels and a boss fight. You may play any level from that floor in any order you want, but to unlock the boss doors, you need to give Orange Waluigi here, otherwise known as Mr. Stick, the required amount of moolah to mosey on into the fight. Go into the levels, collect enough of the top-ins that are trapped in cages throughout the levels, finish the levels so you can get paid $10 for something that looks like the government would pay you millions to privately experiment on, head back to the boss door, buy it, beat the boss inside, and get the key to unlock the elevator while getting yourself 1 floor closer to beating the game. A simple gameplay loop for sure, but that's not the most exciting part. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, so we'll talk about the levels next. Now, each level is different from the last, but never fails to mesh well with the playstyle given to you. It seems as though Peppino's moveset was heavily taken into consideration when making these. It might seem like a bad idea to center level design around being loopy, windy, or long-winded, but it's absolutely perfect for Peppino's ability to climb, dash, slide, and weave through all kinds of terrain. Like Wario Land 4, there's a good bit of enemies that can give you transformations in silly ways, but also you can't use your regular moves while you're in these states. Most of these transformations are necessary to progress anyway, and you'll turn back to normal by touching a priest. But the best part of these open levels is Pizza Time. Taken straight out of Hurry Up from Wario Land 4, Pizza Time is an event in which, after you destroy Pillar John, you run back through the entire level backwards, with the Pillar John blocks that blocked your path before now being transparent so that you can get a different route back to the start. This is loads of fun, especially with the timer on the bottom of the screen that awakens Pizza Face to come after you if it hits 0. Another thing the open levels leave is a wide range of places to hide top-ins, secret eyes, and secret treasures. Secret eyes are typically found by breaking walls, ceilings, and floors, which reveal a pink eye. Wait, pink eye? Oh no. Alas, there are 3 eyes in each level that bring you to a special room. The aim of this room is to get to the end, collecting all the pizza toppings along the way, as well as a random 2019 Patreon backer, which is a really cool way of giving appearances to everyone who put their faith in this game. The secret treasures are locked away in 1 room per level that can only be accessed if you found Jerome in said level. I really like this method of exploration, even if finding Jerome is pretty simple. Something else to try with every level is getting a good rank. Every level has completion ranks ranking from D to S, depending on the amount of points you gather in one level. Just kidding, there's a secret rank! Remember pizza time? Well, there's more to it. To get this secret rank, you must do 4 things in one romp of a level. 1. Have enough points for an S rank. 2. Obtain every secret eye and secret treasure. 3. Never lose the combo on the top right of the screen. This is the most important part. Keep killing enemies and collecting the pizza toppings to keep it up. 4. Go through a pizza portal to warp yourself back to Pillar John's location and complete lap 2 by running back to the start again. This is an intense event that puts your quick thinking, level memorization, and proper knowledge of the moveset to the test. Especially since the timer doesn't restart either, so it's even more likely it'll hit 0 if you don't know what you're doing. If you need a perfect way to have a heart attack, this will definitely do that. But if you can stomach this incredible challenge and get through the door, you can achieve the secret rank, the P rank. I love this challenge, as it really made me better as a gamer through memorizing levels and thinking quickly. It is easily the most adrenaline-filled part of this game, and it made my heart pound for every level I beat with a P rank on my first playthrough of this game. Although for the places where you switch to Gustavo and Brick, the change in gameplay styles was way too sudden for me, and the P ranks took a lot longer simply because I needed to learn how to play these two at a faster rate. P ranks also aren't limited to levels either, because bosses have them as well, which is a perfect segue into talking about how bosses work in this game. There's a boss for each floor in Pizza Tower, and each of them are vastly different from the last, but all of them are really fun to tackle. Peppino will attack bosses by usually grabbing them when they're flashing white, unless he is given a gun. While the Noise will kick out noise bombs that bounce around a bit if the target is missed, and he can never wield a gun. The rank system carries over to the bosses, as I've already mentioned, but getting that rank is dependent on how many hits you've taken during the fight. The P rank is for hitless, S rank is for 1 hit, so on and so forth. Alright, first up is Pepperman. For a first boss, he poses a decent enough challenge for the player to get used to not running all the time, as well as optimizing when to go for him. I like the inclusion of the sliding Knight Pepperman statues for some extra planning, but they can also get metal with Pepperman's regular attacks, leading to some unfair hits. I also wish Pepperman would have used a different attack other than the shoulder dash for his Art Marble attack. After all said and done, I can't say I remember consenting to a sentient pepper sitting on my face, but he got sauce nonetheless. Next on the list is the Vigilante, similar to a cheese slime enemy, but with a cowboy hat. Actually, besides the final boss, this took me the longest to P rank on my first playthrough. It got tough to memorize the patterns and deal with all these combined factors, especially that last phase. That is, until you learn the ultimate strategy to beat this boss as easy as possible. You could always get used to these attacks, but another option is to wait around until his last bounce when he gets hit and knocked back. Charge the gun, blast them, then finish him off with a few more bullets before you can even initiate some of his attacks. It does require some attention to do it just right, but it's still really easy to pull off. I just find it really funny how the cheese slime is the only boss that can be insanely cheesed, which is further extended by the fact that the Noise just shoots him immediately in the quick draw because he is the Noise. Speaking of which, the third floor menace is the man himself, the Noise. But wait, can't we play as the Noise? You might be asking, and to that I say, shut the fuck up, I wasn't done talking yet. As Peppino, you get the Noise's regular fight. I like this boss fight, as it's pretty fair and fun, but the deeper you get into the fight, the less things get telegraphed, so it's not super beginner friendly. Playing as the Noise for this third floor fight will pit you against the Doise, which is the same boss fight except for murder. Up next is Fake Peppino, a copycat Peppino that imitates your every move to crush you with them. This boss gets really creative and starts to get his invincible buddies to help out too, which actually gave me a sense of anxious loneliness. My biggest gripe with this is the difficulty, depending on the character. Peppino's fight is one of his easiest actually, but the Noise's is way more difficult. Shooting a noise bomb can put you in lots of end lag, which Fake Peppino likes to take advantage of sometimes. Also, the chase sequence is painfully easy in both fights, as the long corridor was meant for Peppino's wall climbing and dive dropping, while the Noise's is less built around his moveset, but if Fake Peppino ends up catching up with you, then the Noise just kinda grows big and scares him away, which is honestly incredibly funny. While it's a great fight, I think there's a good opportunity to make the chase more intense, perhaps by adding some kind of screen filter or a heartbeat effect. Spoiler warning! This boss has one hell of an ending, so if you want to experience it for yourself, skip to this time that I'm putting on screen right now. Alright, you good? Perfect. So, the 5th boss and the final one is easily the most cinematic and impactful. It starts out with a lonely pizza face, who has some pretty easy attacks to dodge, but also, it's important to not let the screen get filled with too many enemies. At this point in the game, you should definitely know how to throw things correctly as Peppino, so it's no sweat, but as it gets harder, don't get too distracted and leave yourself open for Pizza Face to smash his pizza face into you. Also, since Pizza Face spawns enemies from his nose, I'm now wondering where in his anatomy he's able to store these enemies. But before I have time to overthink that, the next phase starts, and damn, this one's goofy. It starts out with a little cutscene revealing that Pizza Face was actually just a robot controlled by the comically villainous Pizza Head. He drops down and the second phase begins. Pizza Head has got a bunch of over-the-top cartoonish attacks, where some have difficult dodging to be done, and all are used at random. There's really not a whole lot of cheesing to be done here. It's mostly just testing your reaction time. Something to note is that when a half-destroyed Pizza Face comes down and barfs these cogs at you, by the way, get wrecked. If you're playing as the Noise, you can destroy them with the noise bombs. I'd say look out for the most devastating attack Pizza Head has, which is his rat baseball attack. The rat baseball doesn't really slow down, so it can lead to some misjudging. The final phase is where this fight truly shines though. Another cutscene starts, and Pizza Head will fix himself up, then pull all of the previous bosses out of thin air. At this point, I was like, oh boy, a lame boss rush for the final boss, but lame isn't how this game rolls. Peppino sees the bosses and gives a mighty Italian battle cry, charging at Pepperman in a ferocious lunge with the intent to mince this pepper into his next pizza. If you're playing as the Noise, he turns super instead, which, as a Sonic fan, doesn't make any sense, cause I don't see any shiny gems anywhere. Phase 3 starts and you go through all the regular bosses again, but this time, absolutely obliterating them and dealing a 4-for-1 damage deal with extra demolishing. Gustavo shows up to be used as a throwable object for Peppino since Peppino has no gun for the vigilante part, and, as we've already established, Gustavo is an absolute homie. After kneading these fuckers again like pizza dough, you get to go up against Pizza Head in a one-on-one battle. He'll pull out some attacks, but with the order of these attacks changing every time you try to pummel him, while more attacks get added as the fight goes on. But then, as Peppino, you finally get past the last phase and start to relentlessly massacre Pizza Head. As he's dishing out a beatdown, Peppino sends Pizza Head way up high with him. After a brutal ass whooping that almost reaches the lightning clouds, Peppino locks Pizza Head in an ultimate pile driver. And as Peppino sends this cheesy chap's head right into the tower, I knew this was definitely a good choice playing this game. This last phase really felt like I was the threat, because Peppino was just too angry to be at a disadvantage, and it made the whole fight a lot more climactic. The Noise has an incredibly goofy finale as well. He just pulls out a giant noise bomb and blows up Pizza Head in the most noise way possible. But with that, the final boss ends while the final level is set to start. I really like the setup of this final boss. The only thing I would change is making the one-on-one with Pizza Head a little harder, just to make the ending cutscene that much more impactful. After the most epic showdown, quite possibly, of all time, we find ourselves back on top of the tower. Make your way down into the hole beside you, cross the corridor, and get in the door to the final level, the Crumbling Tower of Pizza. This is a final level where you have to escape the pizza tower, going through the hub areas where the Pillar John blocks were once blocking the way, now free to enter. What once were areas I wanted to get in, but couldn't, are now mandatory to go through, making it all the more satisfying. With the hub areas also comes areas with gimmicks from past levels depending on what floor you're on. The gimmicks are spread pretty well and don't show up too often to ruin their purpose. Through this level, Peppino's friends and the previous bosses will also follow you, scrambling to safety. There are a ton of different aspects that I love about this level, but the best part has to be the music. When those guitars, the choir, and the violins hit, oh my gosh, it really brings a sense of accomplishment and a well-bundled gift of this whole game. Alas, the level has to end at some point, and after going through that final door, which was really well set up by the final long corridor where you started, A cutscene plays out, with everyone hanging around outside while the pizza tower crumbles to dust. We walk up to see a mourning Jerome, a destroyed Pillar John, and a crumpled pizza head. If you didn't collect all the secret treasures, nothing happens, and we just walk back. If we did get all the secret treasures, all of them get absorbed into Pillar John, resurrecting him. Pizza Head will fix himself up, get up, and laugh at Pillar John, but he gets launched into the stratosphere, and everyone celebrates Pillar John's return. The credits roll as some past enemies walk by, but it finally happens. Just like Funny Sans Undertale, now we get to be judged on our performance. For Pepino's playthrough, I got a holy shit end card, which can be achieved by beating the game with at least 96% completion in under 4 hours. There's lots of different end cards, but I believe this one should be the hardest to get. And that's all she wrote, folks. So, did I enjoy my adventure through the titular pizza tower, jumping, dodging, climbing, and smacking my way through? Yes. Absolutely yes. This is now definitely one of my favorite platformers of all time, maybe even in my top 10 favorite games ever. Pizza Tower is absolutely filled to the brim with fun, interesting, and goofy new ideas that don't steal from Wario Land 4, but take it and build something new and fresh while keeping what made the Wario Land games so fun in the first place. Is it perfect? No. But it's a simple game for most platformer fans to enjoy. It's got a wild control scheme, but when you get into the thick of it, it's some of the most fast-paced and frantic fun you can have. It rivals something like the Sonic Unleashed daytime levels that are infamous for having some of the best senses of speed in the entire series. A simple enough plot, some unique character playstyles, a banging soundtrack, and a ton of MS Paint charm make Pizza Tower a special indie game that deserves to be played by many. But of course, the pricks at the Game Awards didn't give it Best Indie Game, so I don't know how to think logically anymore. Fuck!